Are the new mega parishes in the Diocese of Leicester and Truro the way to go forward and save the Church of England? Well, first of all, we need to look at Wigan. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Red Dan. I'm a vicar in the Church of England, and today on this episode of Digging Deeper, I'm looking at an article from The Critic written by Marcus Walker, who is part of the Save the Parish campaign, looking at what's happened in Wigan in two dioceses, and perhaps more to come in the future in Leicester and Truro. They are creating mega parishes, so taking the local priest out and making them an oversight minister in Truro, and then having retired or non-stipendiary clergy running local churches along with the laity. And so you could have 2 or 3 clergy, perhaps up to 25, 30 churches. So you've lost that local contact, but they're hoping that the retired and non-stipendiary clergy will come in and the laity will step up. But we're going to go to Wigan in this article to have a look at what's gone on there, and will it be an indication whether the mega parishes will work. So Marcus Walker in this article starts off, we need to talk about Wigan. Why Wigan, you might ask? Because Wigan is the prototype for a whole new way of being Anglican, which is being rolled out across various dioceses, and being the first of this model, it has been the subject of a detailed study and shown to be disaster. So not quite a success as they wanted it to be, but we're going to get into the article and we're going to see as clergy numbers decline, costs are rising. And I spoke about this before on this channel. There's not a thrust to put more money into clergy in frontline on the coalface, but actually to make these bigger parishes or to reduce clergy numbers. And so you can kind of just work out, it's not really a good thing. Growth is shown even in a report in 2012 by the Church of England, from Antidote to Evidence. It says one parish priest, one church, and that's growth. Anything more, and it doesn't. So Marcus Walker goes on, this is not hyperbole. I'm not sure how else to describe a scheme which drives away a third of your congregation and results in a collapse of giving by a third, which cost 1.2 million to implement and has resulted in the deficits of the churches involved shooting up from 56,000 per year to £295,666. So that's massive. So you've got all these churches with a combined deficit of 56 going up to nearly 300,000, and it cost 1.2 million. So that, I want to get into this article a bit more, see what's going on. Let's go back to the beginning. Wigan was the first project of a vast scheme of national spending called Strategic Development Funding, SDF. SDF is the brainchild of Archbishop Welby and directs the money made available by the church commissioners towards projects designed to bring many more people to church. Projects focused around fresh expressions of church, which could not be spent on resourcing existing parish ministry. So this is one of the things with FDF funding. I've found it myself being in old church buildings, historic church buildings. You would see around lots of money going to new estates and pioneer ministers, and that's not a bad thing in itself, not knocking that. But to try and access this funding for an established church with a building was really hard. Not even really hard, it was just a no, you couldn't go there. So even if a church was growing, in my previous church it was growing, and but it was very poor church, did not have at all much money coming in, or reserves, had to fundraise just to pay parish share and all the bills, fundraise a lot. Seeing all this funding going around but not being able to get anything to it from it is quite frustrating, because we weren't the right category, because we were a church and not a new church plant. So it goes on. Nationally, it has been a failure. A report by Sir Robert Choate, the former head of the Office for Budget Responsibility, showed that out of the 89,375 new disciples anticipated from SDF projects from 2014 to 2021, 12,704 have been witnessed to date. 176 million was earmarked for these projects. So this, talking nationally, not just in Wigan, be quite amazing for 89,000 just in Wigan, but nationally, 12,700 come to faith, and nearly 90,000 that was anticipated. Now, I wouldn't put money above someone coming to know Jesus. You know, it doesn't matter how much money someone coming to Jesus, the whole of heaven celebrates. But this is the reality we are in, where we have churches who are in deficits and need money to be able to do things, even if they are growing as well and can't access that money. So 176 million earmarked for these projects, and it's not looking good, is it, so far? Wigan shows why this has been a disaster financially, but much more importantly, pastorally. The great scheme took the 29 parishes of Wigan and merged them into one super benefice made up of 7 parish hubs. From 2013, the number of clergy was slashed from 24 to 18 and then 13. They would merge back office functions and train laity to take on clergy responsibilities. So this is, in a sense, what is being done in Leicester and Truro. So again, from 24 clergy to 13, merging back office functions is difficult. I've got 2 churches and they function differently. And so there's a whole, I don't know Wigan, so it's a bit harder to say. It might have worked quite well, but even if in 2 churches that I called to, it would be difficult to merge those functions. It'd take a lot of work. You could do it. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but it'd take a lot of work. So anyway, and train laity to take on clergy responsibilities. Well, this is the thing. It's clergy responsibilities. Why train laity? There are some things you work with the clergy to do, but not separate them out and say, no, this is your job. So the project had ambitious aims. By 2021, Wigan would have 5 new expressions of church and 5 emerging expressions of church. They would have increased giving by £500,000. Congregations would be growing in these new forms of church, while the existing parishioners were expected to sit tight and keep giving. And this is the thing, it's all about, instead of revitalising the local church, everybody knows a local church, it's always taking church out and put it somewhere new. I'm not saying that doesn't always work, but if you've got something already there, revitalise, invest in it, and people will come. Doing something new sometimes gets extra expensive. You have to get higher halls and things like that, and so you're paying for hiring and all these things, and then you've got a church building that's empty there, with the faithful who going there and like Marcus Walker says, expected to sit tight and keep giving. So it says, it doesn't take a genius to work out what happened. The people walked and took their money with them. That's the danger. If you slash the number of clergy and the consequential number of services, and remove priests from a direct pastoral relationship with specific congregations, those congregations will feel sufficiently abandoned by the church that they will abandon the church in turn. Instead of bringing in an extra 500,000 a year, they have actually lost 500,000 a year. Slow hand clap. Oof. So, a lot of parochial work of a parish priest is going to visit people, and being there in times of need. It's a pastoral relationship that you as clergy have, and you have access in a very special and unique way. It is very special. And so to take that away, the congregations would feel abandoned, and at a certain point for them to go, well, we haven't got a parish priest, we're not going to get a parish priest, we'll go somewhere that will look after us and shepherd us. And so with that, goes the money. So to expect 500,000 a year and then to lose 500,000 a year, that's huge. And it's about to get worse. Oof. In the wake of the report, the Diocese of Liverpool announced a plan to close 19 of its 29 churches. Oh, so it had 29 churches, all those clergy, and now it's going to 10 churches. With the fall in numbers and giving, they cannot afford to keep them open, they say. That's really, wow. That's, wow. So, what they don't mention is that this was always one of the objects of the COE's original plan, dealing with the buildings issue, namely our understanding of a church which is overly reliant on expensive buildings which are unfit for the 21st century mission and ministry. Okay. Configure the deanery around viable missional units fit for future purpose, each of which reflects a clear mixed economy of church. So, what Marcus Walker's saying here is there's an underlying plan. He's saying of let's do this and then we can legitimately close all these churches, have a few churches which we can run out of because they are very expensive to run, and churches are very expensive to run. And then have a mixed economy, which means you still have fresh expressions in like village halls or wherever it may be, schools or something like that. So so he's saying that's a plan. I hope that wasn't the plan. That's kind of anyway. As you can see, they always planned to close these churches for purely ideological reasons. Now they're going to blame the poor folk of Wigan for plans already in train, which they have objected to from the start. Punishment, beatings shall continue until morale improves. Morale will not improve. There is no plan to row back, apologise to people who feel deeply wounded and work out a better model of resourcing our poorest areas. On the contrary, in the report they highlighted as a key learning that traditionalists and older people feel sidelined and proposed as a solution intergenerational activities / services with older and young people, e.g. technology sessions, ballroom dancing, handicrafts. They asked for communion and were given a handicraft session. That's the thing, older people, traditional people, they want what they once had. That's what they grew up with. And the church or people can argue, well, we want to move forward, but you can do both. That's what we've done in our church. That's what I've done before. That's what most churches do, to offer a traditional service and a contemporary service. Yes, most traditional services are slowly dying. Ours actually is growing. But, we can still offer that as well as doing a contemporary. And yes, it might have to involve moving around times and things like that. But these folk, I'm sure they might grumble a bit, but they know that if they don't, they're going to lose the service anyway. So that, we'll do that. And so from this report that Marcus Walker's talk about, the key learning is to offer them something else rather than what they want. He goes on, there are two overlapping issues here. The first is the belief that a place like Wigan, which has never recovered from the collapse of its mills and mining industry, must pay its own way or lose its churches and priests. As a national church, this is unconscionable. Of course, the poorer areas of the country cannot afford to pay for themselves. That's why Queen Anne set up her bounty to fund the cure souls in poorer parishes. That money is currently paying 150 million a year towards projects that have been shown not to work. Give it back to the parishes and stop this cycle of decline. Which is true, not all parishes, deaneries, which are a group of parishes, like areas, and even some dioceses can't afford to pay, and so you've got your rich. I'm in a rich deanery, and we pay extra to subsidise those poorer deaneries that can't fully pay or their parish share to the diocese. So that's what happens. We that's the Christian way in the sense of giving. And it's obviously not happening here, or that money is being earmarked for special projects and they're not working. The other issue is that the ideological drive to transform the Church of England into a style of church developed for other denominations in other nations, most especially in the United States. For that to be resisted, we need to show that the older Anglican model, particularly to England, still has life in it. But for that, when we ask for bread, we need to be given more than handicraft. And so, again, I said this before on other videos, if our model is a parish with a parish priest, then that's the model that we should be going along and saying this is what we are as a Church of England. But if that model isn't working, and it's proven not to be working, and we need to change the model, then we need to change it. We can't say we're still going to operate by this model, but we're going to do something different. You know, we need to change it. It needs to go through General Synod, and we need to say, okay, this is now what the new Church of England is, rather than saying this is what we are and then doing something completely different. You know, we need to understand what the church is in the 21st century. We need to understand what the church is when they're declining clergy numbers, declining congregational numbers, and what that is. But also we need to, if Wigan is an example of where what other dioceses are doing on a bigger scale is done on a local scale and it hasn't worked, then we need to take note, because it's going to be disastrous, and the knock-on effect will be huge. Again, I go back to the Church of England's own findings. One parish priest in one church grows that church as long as they got their standing on biblical orthodoxy, of course, because it is biblical orthodoxy in the church that is growing both amongst evangelicals and Anglo-Catholics. It's the traditional conservative view that is growing in churches. So that's the model that we should follow. That's the model that we've got, unless we say, look, it isn't working, we need to change, and then we must fundamentally change. But what really is that change? Is it this? I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like it's working.